Your mother told me you haven't responded to her about the apartment situation. I have to say, I'm disappointed in you. I thought we raised you better than this. You know, when you were looking for that apartment 4 years ago, I'm the one who drove you around to look at places. I'm the one who helped you move in. I co-signed on your application when your credit wasn't good enough. That apartment only happened because of this family, and now you want to act like you don't owe us anything? He made this sound with his teeth, that disappointed dad sound that used to make me feel about 2 inches tall. Family is supposed to support each other, Kareem. Flora needs help right now, and instead of stepping up like a good brother, you're playing games. You're making your mother upset. You're stressing out your pregnant sister. And for what? An apartment? You can find another apartment. Flora can't find another family to help her. There was a long pause, and then he said, I expect you to do the right thing. Call your mother back. The message ended. I stood there in my bedroom holding my phone, and something clicked into place in my head. Everything my dad said was about what the family had done for me, like I owed them for the basic stuff parents are supposed to do. He helped me move, he drove me around, he co-signed a lease because my credit was bad when I was 27 and just starting out. These were things he chose to do, things a father does for a son, and now he was using them like debts I had to repay by giving up my home. But when I thought about all the money I had given this family, all the holidays I had hosted, all the times I had said yes when I wanted to say no, nobody ever treated those like debts Flora or my parents owed me. Those were just expected. Those were just what Kareem does because that's who Kareem is. The good son, the helpful brother, the one who always folds. I didn't call my dad back either. I didn't text Flora about paint colors or window measurements. I didn't do anything except sit with my phone in my hand, feeling something shift inside me. Every call, every text, every voicemail made me more certain about what was really happening here. This wasn't about Flora needing help. Flora had a boyfriend with a job. Flora had parents with a spare room in their house. Flora had options that didn't involve taking my apartment. This was about me being the path of least resistance. This was about everyone in my family knowing, deep in their bones, that if they pushed hard enough, I would give in. That's what I had always done. That's who I had always been. The one who said yes to avoid conflict. The one who paid for things because it was easier than fighting about it. The one who showed up and cooked and cleaned and gave and gave and gave because that was the role I had been assigned in this family since I was a kid. They weren't asking me to give up my apartment. They were telling me to because they had never once in my entire life seen me say no and mean it. I thought about all the times I had almost stood up for myself and backed down. The time Flora borrowed my car and returned it with the gas tank empty, and I didn't say anything because I didn't want to start a fight. The time my mom volunteered me to help a cousin move without asking me first, and I spent my whole Saturday carrying boxes because I didn't want to seem rude. The time my dad made a comment about my job being easy compared to his, and I just laughed it off instead of telling him how hard I actually work. A whole lifetime of swallowing my words, of putting everyone else's comfort above my own, of being so afraid of conflict that I let myself become the family doormat. And now they wanted my apartment too. I looked at my phone, at the unanswered texts from Flora, at the voicemails I hadn't returned. 3 days until Sunday dinner. 3 days of silence while they wondered what I was thinking. 3 days for them to stew in the uncertainty of not knowing if their plan was going to work. I put my phone on the table and opened my laptop instead. My presentation wasn't done yet. I still needed to add a few more slides, a few more screenshots, a few more pieces of proof that I had been the one carrying this family for years. While my mom called to guilt me, and my dad called to lecture me, and Flora texted about curtains like my home was already hers, I sat in my apartment and worked on the thing that was going to change everything. They thought my silence meant I was weakening. They thought I was sitting at home feeling bad, working up the courage to call and apologize and tell them I would start packing. They had no idea that my silence was the sound of me getting ready. The sound of me finally, after 31 years, deciding that I was done being the person who always folded. Sunday was coming, and they weren't going to see it coming at all. They mistook my silence for surrender, and that was their biggest mistake. Flora was already picking out curtains for my windows, texting me fabric samples like I had agreed to anything. My mom kept sending me links to apartments in neighborhoods I would never live in, places with bars on the windows and rent that was somehow higher than my current place, acting like she was being helpful. My dad forwarded me some article about family values in modern society, no message attached, just the link sitting there like a lecture I was supposed to read and feel bad about. They had no idea I was building a case that would blow up every single myth they had created about who the real burden in this family was. Sadie came over on Saturday and helped me organize everything into a clear timeline, arranging the slides so they told a story nobody could argue with. Wei, my buddy from work, even texted offering to come to dinner for moral support, though I told him this was something I needed to do alone. The family dinner was tomorrow, and for the first time in my life, I wasn't going to be the one who backed down. The morning of the dinner came, and I woke up with this weird mix of nerves and something that felt like purpose sitting in my stomach. I was making coffee in the kitchen that was still mine for now, when my phone buzzed with a group text notification that made my heart do something weird. It was Flora, and she had created a whole new group chat with the entire family in it, including me. "Good morning, everyone," the message said, with about 5 heart emojis and a baby emoji after it. I just wanted to say thank you all for helping me with this transition into my new place. It means so much to know I have such a supportive family. At Kareem, I know this is a big change for you, but I promise I'll take such good care of the apartment. Can't wait to see everyone at dinner tonight to celebrate. She had tagged me. She had literally tagged me in a thank you note for an apartment I had never agreed to give her. I stared at the screen watching the responses roll in like little punches to the gut. My mom sent back a string of heart emojis and wrote, "So excited for you, sweetie. This is going to be perfect for the baby." My dad responded with, "Family takes care of family. Proud of everyone." Nobody seemed to notice or care that I hadn't actually said yes to any of this. I was being thanked for a decision I hadn't made, for a sacrifice I hadn't agreed to, for a gift I hadn't given. They were all acting like it was done, like my apartment was already Flora's, like my opinion had never mattered in the first place. I felt something heavy settle in my chest as I read those messages over and over again. The old familiar weight, the one that had been sitting there for years, pressing down every time I wanted to say no, but said yes instead. I could feel the guilt starting to creep in around the edges of my thoughts, seeping through the cracks in my anger like water finding its way through a wall. That voice in my head, the one that sounded a lot like my mom, started whispering all the things I had heard my whole life. Just give in, Kareem. Keep the peace. Don't make a scene. Flora needs this more than you do. You're the good son, the responsible one, the one who doesn't cause problems. Family is more important than an apartment. You can always find another place to live. Is a two-bedroom really worth losing your family over? I sat down at my kitchen table with my coffee going cold in my hands, and I looked at my laptop where the presentation was still open from last night. 43 slides, 3 years of proof, $12,000 in receipts and screenshots and evidence that I had been carrying this family on my back while they barely noticed I existed. And for a moment, sitting there in the quiet of my apartment with my family's celebration lighting up my phone screen, I thought about deleting all of it. My finger actually hovered over the trackpad, the cursor sitting right there on the little trash can icon. I could make this all go away with one click. I could text Flora back right now and tell her congratulations, tell her I would start packing next weekend, tell her whatever color she picked for the nursery would look great. I could call my mom and hear the relief flood back into her voice, the warmth returning after days of cold disappointment and guilt trips. I could go to dinner tonight and be the good son again, the one who gives and never asks for anything back, and everything would go back to normal. My family would love me again, or at least they would treat me like they loved me, which was close enough, right? That's what I'd been telling myself for 31 years. Close enough was good enough. Being needed was almost like being wanted. Having a role in the family, even if that role was just being the guy who paid for stuff and showed up when called, that was still something. I almost did it. I almost clicked delete and threw away everything I had spent the last 4 days building. I almost opened up that group chat and typed out the words that would make everyone happy except me. I was so close to letting them win one more time, to being the Kareem they expected, the Kareem who always folded in the end no matter how much it hurt. And then I remembered something that stopped my finger cold. A few weeks ago, when I was looking through my old texts for evidence of all the money I had loaned out, I had come across a conversation that I scrolled past as fast as I could because it hurt too much to look at. But sitting here now, with my finger on the delete button and my whole family celebrating a decision I hadn't made, I went back to my photos and started scrolling. It was a screenshot Sadie had sent me about 2 years ago, a picture she had taken of Flora's phone when Flora left it sitting on a table at some party we were all at. At the time, Sadie hadn't wanted to show me because she said it would just make me feel bad, and there was no point in hurting myself over something I couldn't change. But I had made her send it anyway because I needed to know, and then I looked at it once, felt my chest cave in, and buried it so deep in my camera roll that I basically forgot it existed. Until right now. I scrolled through hundreds of photos until I found it, and I felt my stomach get tight as I read the words on the screen for the second time in 2 years. It was a text conversation between Flora and some friend of hers whose name I didn't recognize. The friend had asked Flora if she was going to some event downtown, and Flora had said she couldn't because she didn't have a ride and her car was in the shop again. The friend suggested asking me, writing, "Can't your brother drive you?" with a smiley face. And Flora's response was right there, in her own words, in black and white text that I could never pretend I hadn't seen. Lol. I guess I could ask Kareem. He's kind of pathetic TBH. Like he doesn't have a girlfriend and he never really has, so that's why he has nothing better to do than help us out. It's actually pretty convenient. He's like a free Uber that also pays for stuff. She had added a crying laughing emoji after the word convenient, like the whole thing was just so funny to her. Her friend had responded with, "OMG, that's mean, but also kind of true, lol," and Flora had written back, "I know, but like what else is he gonna do with his time? At least this way he feels useful." I read those words again, feeling each one land somewhere deep in my chest. Pathetic. Nothing better to do than help us. At least this way he feels useful. I read them a third time, watching the letters blur a little because my eyes were doing something weird that I refused to call crying. And then something inside me went very, very quiet. Not angry, not sad, not hurt in the way I had been hurt so many times before. Just cold. Like someone had reached inside my chest and turned off a switch that had been buzzing in the background my entire life. A switch I didn't even know was on until it suddenly wasn't. The guilt that had been creeping through my chest dried up and blew away like dust. The voice in my head that sounded like my mom stopped talking mid-sentence and went silent. The weight I had been carrying for years, the one that pressed down every time I tried to say no and made me feel like the worst person in the world for wanting something for myself, lifted off my shoulders like it had never been there at all. I looked at my presentation, at the 43 slides, at the proof of everything I had given to a family that thought I was pathetic for giving it. And I understood something that should have been obvious a long time ago, but somehow never was. This wasn't about the apartment. It had never really been about the apartment. It was about every version of me that had ever gotten walked over. The kid who gave up his toys because Flora wanted them. The teenager who missed his own stuff to show up for hers. The adult who paid and paid and paid and never heard thank you. Never got asked how he was doing. Never got treated like a real person with his own needs and dreams and feelings that mattered. It was about 31 years of being told that family comes first, and then watching my family put me dead last, over and over again, while I smiled and nodded and told myself that one day they would see everything I had done for them. They did see it. They saw all of it. They just didn't care because to them, I wasn't a brother or a son. I was convenient. I was a free Uber that also paid for stuff. I was pathetic. I closed the screenshot and put my phone face down on the table. My coffee was completely cold now, but I didn't care about that anymore. I picked up my laptop and looked at my presentation one more time, and instead of deleting it, I added one final slide at the very end. A screenshot of Flora's text. Her own words, in her own hand, sent to her own friend. Pathetic. Nothing better to do. At least this way he feels useful. Tonight, my family was going to see exactly who they had been treating like a doormat for 3 decades. And for the first time in my life, I wasn't doing it for them. I was doing it for every version of me that never got to stand up. I walked into that dinner with my laptop in my bag and a calm I had never felt before in my entire life. Flora was already there when I arrived, sitting in the living room with her hand on her belly, glowing and smug, talking to my mom about nursery themes and baby furniture like she was already moved into my apartment. My parents had set an extra place at the table for her boyfriend, some guy I had met maybe twice, like this whole thing was a celebration dinner instead of what it actually was. They didn't notice that I hadn't brought wine like I usually did every single Sunday. They didn't notice that I sat down at the head of the table, the spot where my dad normally sat, instead of my usual chair tucked in the corner. They were all too busy congratulating themselves on solving Flora's problem, on being such a supportive family, on making everything work out so perfectly. They never saw me pull my laptop out of my bag and walk over to the TV. My mom looked up from her conversation with Flora and squinted at me like I had just grown a second head. "Kareem, honey, what are you doing?" she asked, her voice still pleasant, but with this edge underneath it like she could already tell something was off. I didn't answer her right away. I just plugged the cable into my laptop and clicked the button to mirror my screen, and suddenly the TV that usually showed cooking shows and football games was displaying something very different. The first slide popped up in big bold letters that filled the whole screen, white text on a dark blue background, simple and clean and impossible to ignore. Family Contributions 2021 to 2024. That's all it said. Just a title, just a date range, just the beginning of everything I had been putting together for the past 4 days. The room went quiet for about half a second before Flora let out this nervous little laugh, the kind of laugh people do when they're not sure if something is a joke or not. "Okay, what is this?" she said, looking around at my parents like she was waiting for someone to explain what was happening. "Is this some kind of presentation? Are you doing a bit right now?" My dad pushed his chair back from the table and crossed his arms over his chest. "Kareem, stop being dramatic," he said, his voice flat and tired like he was already exhausted by whatever I was about to do. "We're here to have a nice family dinner, not watch some slideshow. Put that away and sit down." My mom was already reaching for the remote control on the coffee table, her hand stretching out like she was going to just turn off the TV and make this whole thing disappear. But I was faster. I picked up the remote before she could get to it and slipped it into my pocket, never taking my eyes off the screen. "Actually, I think you're all going to want to see this," I said, and my voice came out steady in a way that surprised even me. "I've been doing some math, and I think it's time we all looked at the numbers together." I clicked to the next slide, and there it was. A list of dates and dollar amounts going back 3 years, each line showing money that had left my bank account and gone somewhere into this family. The first entry was Flora's car insurance, 6 months of payments, $1,200 total, with a note next to it that said, "Never repaid." My mom's hand dropped back to her lap. My dad uncrossed his arms. Flora stopped laughing. I kept going. The next slide showed the credit card charges from when Flora borrowed my card for emergencies. Each line item listed out with the date and the amount, and a little description of what it was. Gas station, $42. Grocery store, $67. Then it started getting interesting. Spa downtown, $240. Nail salon, $80. Boutique shopping, $315. Wellness retreat, $400. Fancy restaurant, $180. The total at the bottom of the slide was circled in red, $1,547, with another note that said, "Promised for emergencies only, never repaid." I watched Flora's face as the numbers scrolled by, and I saw the exact moment when she realized what she was looking at. Her skin went from that pregnant glow to something closer to the color of paper. Her mouth opened and then closed again.